Have you ever wondered why there are people who make a lot of money, yet always look exhausted? They work nonstop, they earn an income others dream of, but deep inside they live with a quiet fear if they stop, everything will collapse. Most people are taught that as long as you make enough money, you'll be free. It sounds reasonable, but what's the truth? Why is it that the more they earn, the busier they become? Why does income increase, but time to live decreases? And why do so many high earners not dare to rest for even a single day? I want you to imagine it this way. Income is like a cage. When you earn little, the cage is small. When you earn more, the cage expands. It looks more comfortable, but it is still a cage. You still have to stay inside. You still have to show up every day. And you still have to trade your lifetime to keep it going. I still remember very clearly the early stage of my life. I worked hard, I made money, and I believed I was getting closer to freedom. But then one day I realized something that kept me awake for many nights. If tomorrow I didn't work, my life would immediately slow down or even come to a complete stop. And that's when I understood income doesn't free you. It only prolongs dependence. In today's video, I want to share with you the most important principles that help you face this truth head on. Not to scare you, but to wake you up. And you should stay until the end of the video, because the final principle can completely change how you see money, work, and your entire life. Principle 1, the biggest lie about money. There is a lie that has been repeated so many times that it has become truth in most people's minds. That lie is the belief that high income equals freedom. I don't blame you if you believe it. Society believes it. Families believe it. Schools believe it. From a very young age, we are taught, study hard, get a good job, increase your income every year, and then one day you'll be free. It sounds logical. But I want you to pause for a moment and look closely. If income is freedom, why do so many high earners live in constant stress? If income is freedom, why do they rarely have time for family, health, or themselves? And if income truly frees you, why is the fear of losing it so overwhelming? I used to believe that lie. There was a time in my life when I thought my only problem was that I wasn't making enough money. I thought if I just earn more, everything will be fine. So I worked more, I accepted being busier, I traded more of my lifetime for bigger numbers. My income went up, but strangely, the feeling of freedom didn't. Instead, I began to feel more tightly bound, because every time my income increased, I didn't just gain more money, I gained more responsibility, more expenses, more obligations, and more fear that if that cash flow disappeared, everything I had built would collapse. That's when I realized an uncomfortable truth: income doesn't buy you freedom, it buys you a bigger obligation. Imagine you're running on a treadmill. When you run slowly, you still have to run. When you run faster, the machine speeds up. You get more tired, your heart beats faster, but you're still in the same place. Income works the same way. When you earn little, you work to survive. When you earn more, you work to maintain a bigger life. And the machine never stops. The most dangerous part of this lie isn't that it's wrong, it's that it keeps you running, believing that if you just push a little harder, freedom will arrive. But freedom doesn't come from earning more. Freedom comes from needing less. I've met many people who earn far more than I do, yet they don't dare take a single day off. They don't dare refuse a project. They don't dare say no to a job they hate. They aren't poor in money, they're poor in choice. And that's when I understood freedom isn't how much you earn, it's whether you can stop. If tomorrow you didn't work for 30 days, what would your life look like? That question isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to help you face the truth. Because income, no matter how high, has one thing in common: it always requires you to show up. If you don't show up, it disappears. If you stop, it stops with you. And anything that disappears the moment you stop is never freedom. I'm not saying income is bad. Income is necessary. Income is part of life. But the problem begins when you mistake income for the destination instead of seeing it as a temporary result. When you build your life entirely around income, you're building a house on sand. Everything looks fine until you're forced to stop. And I've made that mistake before. I thought I was moving forward when in reality, I was just running faster in the same circle. Only when I started asking the right question did everything change. Not how can I make more money, but how can my life not fall apart when I stop? That was the first moment of awakening. And it wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. Because if you don't recognize this lie early, you'll spend your entire life chasing something that promises freedom but only delivers a more subtle form of dependence. And that's just the beginning. In the next principle, I'll show you why income is always tied to time. and why that trap keeps most people stuck no matter how hard they try. Principle 2, income is always tied to time. After you see the biggest lie about money, the next thing you need to understand is how income actually works. Because income has one characteristic that very few people are willing to face. Income is always tightly linked to your time. Not partially, not occasionally, but always. If you show up, money flows. If you don't show up, money stops. And anything that only exists when you are present is quietly buying your life back hour by hour. When you're young, this doesn't seem very scary. You have energy. You have health. You think time is endless. So you're willing to trade it for money. You work overtime. You take on more responsibility. You give up evenings, weekends, even vacations, and you tell yourself it's only temporary. But then something very subtle happens. Your life expands with your income. You have more bills, more commitments, more things to maintain. And from that moment on, your time no longer belongs to you. I've seen this repeat countless times. Someone starts with a simple job, they do well, their income increases, then they're given more responsibility, they do even better, their income continues to rise, but at the same time they lose control of their life schedule. Their life begins to revolve around work, not around family, not around health, not around the things they truly value. And the scariest part is, they call it success. Let me say this very clearly. There is nothing wrong with working hard. There is nothing wrong with increasing your income. But if every dollar you earn demands more of your time, then you're not building freedom, you're just selling yourself at a higher price. I've been in that state. There were days when my schedule was so full I didn't have a single free hour to think. I was busy, I was productive, I was recognized, but I had no inner space. And that's when I began to realize something very important. Money wasn't working for me, I was working for money. This kind of income is like an hourglass. Every day you flip it over. The sand flows, you get paid. The next day you have to flip it again. If you forget, or you no longer have the strength, the flow stops. Income has no ability to continue on its own. It doesn't remember who you are. It doesn't care how hard you worked yesterday. It asks only one question every day. Did you show up today? And if the answer is no, the income disappears. That's why so many high earners live in a state of constant stress. They're not afraid of lacking money. They're afraid of running out of time to keep earning it. They fear illness. They fear rest. They fear slowing down. Because in this system, slowing down equals loss. I've met people who told me I'll rest in a few more years. But a few years pass, and they're still there. Just more tired and more dependent. Because with every passing year, their life is built more deeply on a dangerous assumption that they will always have enough time and energy to continue. But time isn't something you can store, and energy isn't something you can borrow. One day, whether you want it or not, you will be forced to slow down. And when that day comes, the question won't be, how much money did you make, but can your life keep running when you no longer show up every day? That's the question. Very few people dare to ask while they're still busy. Because when you live on income tied to time, you don't own time, you owe it. And that debt is collected quietly day by day. I'm not saying this to discourage you. I'm saying this to wake you up. Because only when you realize that time is the most valuable asset do you begin to ask the right questions. Not how can I work more, but how can my life not depend entirely on my daily presence? And that is the door to the next principle. Because when income keeps increasing, but everything still depends on your time, a very dangerous phenomenon appears. Pressure grows faster than freedom. Principle 3, high income, higher pressure. There is a paradox that very few people dare to talk about. The more money you make, the more you have to lose. At first, when income increases, it feels great. You see yourself progressing. You see your efforts being rewarded. And you think the pressure will eventually decrease over time. But reality is the complete opposite. Higher income does not make pressure disappear. It only changes the shape of the pressure. When you earn, little pressure comes from lack. When you earn a lot, pressure comes from maintenance. And maintenance pressure is always far heavier. Because lack can push you to act, but loss makes you afraid. I have witnessed this happen to many people. As income increases, their lives naturally begin to expand. Bigger houses, better cars, higher fixed expenses, more long-term commitments. No one forces them to do this. They do it because they can. And then little by little, they step into a very subtle trap. High income creates high costs, which create high pressure. From that moment on, income is no longer a reward. It becomes the condition for everything to exist. I have spoken with people whose income many others dream of, But when I asked them a very simple question, if you stopped working for 6 months, what would happen? They went silent. Not because they didn't know the answer, but because they were afraid to say it out loud. Because they knew that the moment cash flows slowed down, the entire life system they were maintaining would begin to shake. And that is when I realized an important truth. High income does not create a sense of security. It only makes the fear of loss more sophisticated. Low-income people fear not having enough money. High-income people fear losing everything they are used to. They fear losing status. They fear losing image. They fear having to lower their standard of living. And that fear is what keeps them stuck. They don't dare change. They don't dare slow down. They don't dare try a new direction. Not because they are weak, but because the cost of mistakes has become too high. I have been in that state. There was a time when I realized I was no longer making decisions based on what was right, but based on what was least risky for my current income. I didn't ask, will this make me more free? I asked, will this affect cash flow? And that is the clearest sign that you have lost freedom of choice. Because true freedom is not how much money you have. True freedom is whether you can make decisions without being controlled by financial fear. When income becomes the only pillar, every decision in life must revolve around protecting it. You do work you no longer love. You continue compromises you once promised yourself you would never accept. You stay in places you have wanted to leave for a long time. Not because you are greedy, but because you are bound. Income at this point is no longer a tool. It becomes a gold-plated chain. Beautiful on the outside, heavy on the inside. And the most dangerous part is you begin to tie your self-worth to your income level. When income is high, you feel valuable. When income is threatened, you feel insecure. But human value should never depend on a number that can disappear with a single decision. I learned that when you build your life entirely on income, you place all your peace into something that cannot protect you when you weaken. Because everyone weakens at some point. Health declines, energy changes, life priorities shift. And when that happens, pressure no longer comes from the outside. It comes from the very life you have become accustomed to. The question is not, how can I make more money? The real question is, why do I have to keep running just to stay in the same place? If the higher your income becomes, the less you dare to stop, that is not progress. It is a more advanced form of dependence. And if you have ever felt stuck in this loop, remember one thing: pressure is not a sign of success. Sustained pressure is a sign that you are building your life on the wrong foundation. And that is why in the next principle I will show you how income creates the illusion of safety and why the moment you stop, that illusion disappears faster than you expect. If what I've just shared feels like you are seeing yourself in it, understand that you are not alone. Many people are living in the same loop, working hard, making money, but never feeling more free. If you want to continue this journey with me, where we don't just talk about money, but about real freedom press, subscribe for the Rohn Treasures channel. Each video here is created to help you think more deeply, live more intentionally, and build a life you don't need to run away from. Now, let's continue. Principle 4. Income creates an illusion of safety. One of the most dangerous things about income is not that you have to work to get it. It is the false sense of security it creates. When money flows steadily into your account each month, you begin to feel like you are standing on solid ground. You can pay your bills. You can maintain your life. You can plan for the future, and you think, everything is fine. But I want you to look closely at that feeling. Income is not a foundation, it is just a flow. And anything that only exists while it is flowing can disappear the moment it stops. The illusion of safety begins here. Because when income is stable, you don't feel the risk. Not because the risk doesn't exist, but because it hasn't happened yet. It's like standing on thin ice in winter. As long as the ice hasn't cracked, you believe you are standing on solid ground. But with just one small crack, you realize you were never truly safe. I have seen this happen to many people. They have good jobs, stable income. Life looks fine from the outside. But that entire system only needs one small disruption to collapse. A health issue, a change at work, a decision made by someone else that they cannot control. And immediately what they called safety disappears. Not because they did something wrong, but because they placed their sense of safety in something that was never designed to protect them when they weaken. Income has no protective function. It has no buffer. It does not stand by you when you no longer have the strength to continue. It only pays for your current presence. The day you are no longer present, the illusion of safety dissolves. I once believed I was safe because I had income, until I asked myself, if I stop for a few months, what happens? And the answer made me uncomfortable, because I realized I wasn't safe, I just hadn't been tested yet. There is a huge difference between not having faced risk and being protected from risk. Income only gives you the first. It never provides the second. That is why so many people live with quiet anxiety even when everything looks fine on the surface. They are not afraid of the present. They are afraid of the day the present no longer continues. They fear stopping. They fear interruption. They fear a day when they can no longer keep running. And that fear makes them cling tighter to income instead of questioning the foundation of their life. But let me be very clear. Real safety does not come from money continuing to flow. Real safety comes from your life remaining stable when the flow temporarily stops. If your entire sense of peace depends on whether you go to work tomorrow, that is not safety. That is dependence cleverly disguised. And the longer that dependence lasts, the longer you delay building something that can truly protect you in the long run. I am not saying this to scare you. I am saying this to wake you up sooner, because only when you realize that income creates only an illusion of safety do you begin searching for a real foundation. And that foundation is not in the number you earn this month. It lies in a much deeper question. If I don't work tomorrow, what in my life continues to function? That question will lead you to the next principle. Because once the illusion of safety is stripped away, you will realize an even more thought-provoking truth. Income has no memory. It does not work for you tomorrow. Principle 5. Income has no memory. There is a very simple truth about income that most people never stop to think about. Income has no memory. It does not remember how hard you worked yesterday. It does not remember how many years of your life you sacrificed. It does not remember how much effort it took for you to reach your current position. Everyday income asks you only one question: did you show up today? If the answer is yes, money comes. If the answer is no, money stops. That is not punishment. It is simply the nature of income. And this very nature traps many people in a loop they don't even realize they are in. You work today to get paid today. Tomorrow you have to start over again. There is no accumulated reward. There is no compounding effect. It's like pushing a boulder uphill every morning. By evening, the boulder rolls back down. The next morning, you start again from the bottom. You may be stronger, you may be faster, but you still have to push from the beginning. I lived in that loop. There were periods when I felt extremely busy. I worked a lot, I made money, and I thought I was moving forward, but then I realized something deeply uncomfortable. I wasn't building anything that could continue to exist when I stopped. Everything I had was only the result of today. Tomorrow, if I slowed down, everything slowed down with me. If I stopped, everything stopped. And that was when I understood income is not something you build. It is something you constantly create and then lose. Income is like breathing. It is necessary. It sustains life. But you cannot store breath for tomorrow. You must keep breathing every day, every hour. Many people confuse making money with creating lasting value. They think that if they have worked long enough, if they have contributed enough years, life will somehow remember that. But income does not remember. It does not know who you are. It only responds to your present presence. That is why so many people feel exhausted yet cannot stop. Because they know that if they rest, they don't just rest, they lose the only flow sustaining their life. I once asked a friend very directly, if you stop working for 3 months, what happens? After a moment of silence, he answered, I don't dare try. Not because he was lazy, but because his income had no memory. It did not care about the years he had sacrificed before, and that is the trap. When you live entirely on income, you are living in a system where every day is a test. There is no real day off, no safe pause, no space to step back and think. Because the moment you step back, income disappears. This pushes people into very short-term decisions. They choose safety over what is right. They choose maintenance over building. They choose busyness over strategy. Not because they are unintelligent, but because the system they live in gives them no space to think long-term. I learned that anything you must constantly renew just to survive cannot be a foundation for freedom. Income needs you every day. Freedom does not. Freedom is when past efforts continue to create value in the present. But income does not do that. It has no inheritance. It does not carry yesterday's value into today. And if you don't realize this early, you will keep running, not because you want to, but because you have no other choice. I am not saying you should hate income. Income is necessary. It is a tool. But the problem begins when you place your entire life on a tool with no memory. At that point, you are no longer building a future. You are only extending the present. The important question is not how much money did I make today, but will what I am doing today continue to create value when I stop? If the answer is no, then you are completely dependent on a short-term flow. And that dependence will sooner or later turn into prolonged exhaustion. But don't worry, recognizing this is not the end, it is the beginning. Because when you understand that income has no memory, you will start looking for something else. Not something that helps you earn more, but something that prevents you from starting over from zero every day. And that is why in the next principle I will show you the core difference between earning money and building a foundation. One forces you to keep running. The other allows you to slow down while life continues to move forward. Principle 6, running vs. building. There is a huge difference that if you don't recognize early will keep you busy for your entire life without getting very far. That difference is between running and building. When you run, you move. When you build, you create something that stays. Income by nature is an act of running. You run every day to create that day's result. You stop, the result stops. There is nothing wrong with running. The problem begins when you only run and never build. I lived that way. There was a period when my life looked very busy. Packed schedule, lots of work, stable income. But when I look back, I realized something frightening. If I stopped for 6 months, nothing I had done would continue to create value. Everything I had was tied to my present presence. That was when I understood running helps you survive the day, building gives you a future. Imagine two people. The first runs every day to make a living. The second spends part of their time laying bricks. The first looks very busy. The second looks slower. But after a few years, the second has a foundation. The first only has more exhaustion. Building does not deliver immediate results. And that is exactly why so few people choose it. Running is easy to measure. You see results immediately. You get paid immediately. Building is quiet, no applause, no immediate pay. But what is built correctly continues to exist even when you are no longer there. I once asked myself, why do I always feel rushed? And the answer was very simple. Because when you only run, you live in constant fear that if you slow down, everything will collapse. Running gives you no space to think. It only gives you the feeling of doing something. But that feeling is easy to mistake for progress. Many people stay busy their entire lives, but when they look back, they cannot point to a single thing they built that can stand on its own. They did a lot, but they left no foundation. Building requires a different kind of discipline. You must accept doing things that bring no immediate result. You must accept not being recognized for a long time, and you must accept moving slower than those who focus only on income. I have seen many smart people give up on building simply because they could not tolerate the silence of the early stage. No praise, no visibility, no money. But it is in that silence that the foundation is formed. I learned that anything truly valuable takes time to accumulate. You cannot build a house in one day, but you can lay one brick each day. And one day those bricks will begin to work for you. Running requires energy every day. Building requires consistent discipline, and discipline always beats motivation. When you only run, your life depends entirely on your current condition. When you build, your life begins to support itself. That is the difference. I am not saying you must stop earning money in order to build. That is unrealistic. I am saying you must dedicate a portion of your life to building instead of spending all of it running, even if it is just a small portion. Because a small portion, if built correctly and long enough, will become a strong foundation. The question is not how fast are you running. The real question is, what are you building that will remain when you stop? If your answer is nothing, then you are living in a race with no finish line. But if you start building even slowly, even quietly, you are changing the trajectory of your life. And that is a critical moment. Because when you begin to build, you will see income through an entirely different lens. No longer as the destination, but as temporary fuel to support the building process. And that is exactly what I will share in the next principle. Because when you understand the difference between running and building, you will begin to see money work and your entire life in a way you never have before. Principle 7, how I learned to see income. There was a point in my life when I began to see income in a completely different way. Not because I was making more money, but because I stopped seeing income as the destination. Before that, like most people, I believed that if I could steadily increase my income, life would gradually stabilize, and then one day, freedom would appear. But the further I went, the more I realized one thing. Income is not something you chase. Income is the result of the person you are becoming. And when you confuse the result with the goal, you will spend your entire life chasing numbers without ever touching real peace. I once asked myself, why do I always feel like I have to try harder even though my income has increased? And the answer was very clear. Because I was trying to control the outcome while neglecting the root cause. Income is like a shadow. If you chase the shadow, it will always stay in front of you. The faster you run, the faster it runs. But if you turn your back and walk toward the sun, the shadow follows automatically. I learned this: don't chase income, build personal value. When personal value increases, income increases with it, but that is only a byproduct, not the main reward. Many people ask me, Jim, what should I do to make more money? And I always want them to ask a different question. What kind of person are you becoming? Because you are not paid for effort. You are paid for the value you bring to the marketplace. And that value cannot be built in a rush. I began to see income as a temporary result of long-term discipline, not something to brag about, not something to cling to, but an indicator showing whether I was on the right path. When income dropped, I didn't panic. I didn't ask, how do I patch this number as fast as possible? I asked, where in my discipline have I loosened something? Because income never lies. It reflects very honestly how you live, work, and think. But only if you see it in the right role. When you treat income as the goal, you will trade everything to protect it. When you treat income as the result, you will focus on things that cannot be easily taken away. Discipline, skills, reputation, personal value, those are the things that create protective delay in life. I realized that freedom does not come from how much you make this year, but from your ability to create value at any stage of life. When you are young, you have energy. When you are older, you have experience. If you continuously build value, income may change form, but it does not disappear completely. That is a major difference. People who live only on income panic when the environment changes. People who live on value adapt. I have seen many people lose income very quickly, not because they were incapable, but because they never built themselves beyond their current role. They did one job well, but they did not develop who they were. And when the job changed, the income disappeared. That was not failure. That was an inevitable consequence. I learned this. Don't build your life around a cash flow. Build it around a person. That person is you. When you become more valuable, you have more options, and freedom in the end is simply the ability to choose without being driven by fear. If you have to keep a job only because of income, you are not free. If you don't dare change because you fear losing cash flow, you are not free. Freedom begins when you know that even if circumstances change, you can still create new value. That is how I see income. Not as a destination, not as a lifeline, but as feedback for the path I am on. And when you see income that way, it loses the power to control your life. You no longer chase it, you lead it. And that is the biggest mindset shift. But the journey does not end here. Because even when you understand income correctly, many people still cannot escape the old loop, not because they don't understand, but because they were taught how to work, not how to own. Principle 8, train to work, not to own. There is a very deep and rarely spoken reason why most people never escape the loop of living on income. Not because they are lazy, not because they lack intelligence, and not because they don't try hard enough, but because from the beginning they were trained in the wrong direction. We are taught how to work, but rarely taught how to own. From a young age, the message is very clear. Show up on time, follow instructions, complete tasks, do the job assigned well. And if you do it long enough, you will be rewarded with stable income. There is nothing wrong with those lessons. They create responsible people, but they do not create free people. Because in that entire process, no one asks you an important question. What are you building for yourself? I once looked back at my life and realized something very clearly. I was trained extremely well to become an effective worker, but I was almost never taught how to become an owner. And the difference between these two roles determines the entire trajectory of your life. A worker is paid for time and effort. An owner is paid for control and accumulated value. A worker must show up every day. An owner can be absent and the system still runs. But because no one teaches us this early, most people never question it. They simply keep doing better at what they were taught. They work harder, they climb higher within the same structure. They earn higher salaries. But they remain in a role where they own nothing except current income. I have met many people who are excellent at their jobs. They have skills, they have discipline, they have work ethic. But when I ask them, if you stop working for a while, what do you still own? They have no clear answer. Not because they lack value, but because their entire lives are built around execution, not accumulation. We are trained to complete tasks, not trained to build systems. We are rewarded for being busy, not encouraged for thinking long-term. And so many people live their entire lives in constant activity, yet never develop protective delay. When they are strong, everything works. When they are weak, everything shakes. That is not a personal failure. That is the result of an educational and mental model. I learned this: if you do not actively learn how to own, you will default to working for life. Not because you want to, but because you don't know there is another option. Ownership is not just paperwork or physical assets. Ownership is having something that continues to create value without your constant presence. It could be reputation. It could be a rare skill. It could be a system you build and maintain. But if you do not intentionally direct your life toward that, you will keep trading time for money no matter how good you are. I had to relearn from the beginning, not how to work, but how to think. I had to shift my question from how much did I get done today to do I own what I am creating today? If you do not own the results of your effort, you are only enriching someone else's present. That is a hard truth, but it needs to be said, because only when you clearly see this model can you begin to move against it. Not by rebelling, not by abandoning everything, but by adding a new direction to your life. The direction of ownership, dedicating part of your time, energy, and thinking to building something that belongs to you. It does not have to be big. It does not have to be fast, but it must be durable, because ownership does not deliver instant results, but it gives you future options, and the ability to choose is the core of freedom. If you feel you have done everything you were taught to do right, yet freedom still feels no closer, then the problem may not be your effort. It may be the role you are living in. You were taught how to work. Now it is time to learn how to own. And when you begin to shift that role, you will face the final question and the most important question of this entire journey. Because in the end, freedom is not just about money or work. It is a very simple question. If tomorrow I do not work, what will my life look like? And that is exactly what I will look at with you in the final principle. Principle 9. The awakening question. After everything we have talked about up to this point, there is one question that sooner or later anyone who is serious about their life must face. It is not a question about money. It is not a question about work. It is a question about freedom. That question is very simple. If tomorrow you did not work, what would your life look like? Take a moment and truly feel this question. Not to answer it quickly, not to reassure yourself, but to face it directly. Because the answer will tell you whether you are living in freedom or in subtle dependence. If tomorrow you stop and everything begins to fall apart, the problem is not tomorrow. The problem lies in how you have built your life up to today. Many people avoid this question, not because they do not understand it, but because they are not ready to face the truth that they have built their entire lives on the need to keep showing up. They must be present for money to flow. They must be present for life to function. They must be present so that everything does not collapse. And that is not freedom. That is a cleverly disguised form of dependence. I am not saying this to make you feel hopeless. On the contrary, I am saying this because this is the starting point of all real change. Because when you face this question honestly, you begin to change the way you live each day. You no longer ask, how much did I make today? You ask, what did I do today to reduce my dependence on tomorrow? And that is a profound shift. Freedom does not come from one single big decision. It comes from small decisions repeated every day. The decision not to spend everything you earn. The decision not to trade all your time for short-term income. The decision to invest part of your energy into things that do not pay immediately but return choice in the future. Many people think freedom is a distant destination, but I have learned that freedom is a direction. Every day you move in that direction, even by one small step, you are already far ahead of those who stand still and hope. If today you begin to build a foundation, tomorrow you will not have to run as hard as you do today. If today you learn how to own tomorrow, you will not be completely dependent on your presence. Life does not require you to change everything immediately. It only requires you to stop lying to yourself. Do not call busyness success. Do not call income freedom. And do not call prolonged dependence stability, because stability without freedom is just a form of delay, and delay, if prolonged long enough, turns into regret. I want to end this video with one very simple thought. You and I share the same gift. That gift is today. Today gives you the opportunity to rethink, to realign, and to begin moving in a different direction, a direction that does not force you to run your entire life just to stay in the same place. Financial freedom does not begin with earning more. It begins with stopping dependence on the thing that makes you afraid to stop If this video made you think, press like to spread this message to others who may also be stuck. If you want to continue the journey of building a more intentional life, subscribe to the Rohn Treasures channel to explore principles with me that help you move forward every day. And I want to ask you one question, answer honestly in the comments. If tomorrow you did not work, what would your life look like? I truly appreciate that you stayed until the end of this video. See you in the next videos.